once again. Welcome to Habits and Health Span, an Amway podcast. Thank you for being with us. My name is Alyssa. I am joined by some incredible guests who we will get to in just a minute. And of course, also joined by co-host John here. Hi, John.
Hi, Alyssa. Great being with you.
Likewise.
So, Alyssa, on this podcast, we're talking a lot about various ways to increase our health span. And that necessitates lots of healthy choices. But you and I were just talking before we started rolling about how much we love desserts. And you
Some
are a
less
dessert
healthy choices.
aficionado, right?
I love desserts.
I mean, part of health span, right? Living longer, you got to enjoy some of those years with the occasional indulgence.
Sure, of course.
Rapid fire, yay or nay on certain desserts,
I'm
right?
ready.
Here we go.
Yep.
Cookies.
The best.
The best. Amazing. Okay, brownies.
Okay, on occasion.
Okay, pie.
No.
Hey, that's fair. And ice cream.
I love ice cream.
Amazing.
I actually can't have ice cream though because of the whole lactose thing.
Oh, yeah. As I get older, it's now like 1 in every 3 or 5 bowls of ice cream. I can't do it.
It's not a pretty thing.
Yeah. Hey, the gut is a fickle thing.
It is.
But
it's true.
Luckily, we have some incredible guests to guide us through gut health. Here with us today, 2 amazing gentlemen. First up, we have Dr. Yosep Ji. He's the CEO of H.E.M. Pharma and a member of Amway's Scientific Advisory Board. Dr. Ji, welcome.
Thank you very much for the invitation. You can just call me Yosep.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you tell us a little bit about your background?
I started my education with management and IT, but all of a sudden I got super interested in the bacteria and the life sciences. So I think it was my 3rd year in the university, I changed my second major into the life sciences. And then I studied the life sciences. It took me more than 11 semesters just to graduate the undergraduate. And then I studied the master's and PhD. I did the postdocs in Technion Institute. And I used to be the research professor in the life science department. But all of a sudden, I started a company called H.E.M. Pharma. And now I'm the CEO of the H.E.M. Pharma.
Well, quite the list of credentials, and we are super lucky to have you with us today.
All right, great. And we also have with us Dr. Matt Runyon. He's a senior manager at Global Sciences at Amway Research and Development. Welcome to you also.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. And I will say that if Dr. G's not going to have you call him doctor, I don't want that either. Just call me Matt.
Okay, perfect. Tell us a little bit about your background.
So I have a background. I did my bachelor's in science in biochemistry at the University of Southern California. How I ended up there is a long story. I grew up in Michigan, but I ended up out there. I was there for 4 years and then decided I wanted to get back to the Midwest. And that brought me to the University of Chicago, where I did a PhD in chemistry. Went and worked at a startup company for about 5 years and then ended up at Amway about 14 years ago. The first 10 years was related to a job called Open Innovation, which is where you go out and look for new technologies that you can bring into the company that can be incorporated into our products. That's what led me to H.E.M. and meeting Dr. G. Over the last 4 years, I've been the title that you called me, a manager of global sciences. And now we're here today talking about PMAS and short-chain fatty acids eventually.
And we can't wait to get to those, but let's take a couple steps back first and kind of build up there for a second. Today we're talking about the gut. And I always like to start by just saying, what's the baseline of what this looks like when it's healthy? So Matt, we'll start with you. A healthy, functioning gut. What are the key components of it?
Yeah, so my opinion, it starts with a diverse microbiome. And when I say a diverse microbiome, what I mean by that is that you have an abundance of different organisms, that different species in your gut, and they're at equivalent levels. And I think that sets the foundation for your gut microbiome to do the things that we know it can do. But ultimately, I think the way that you will observe that you have a good gut is by the way that you go to the bathroom. So your stool consistency, your stool frequency, etc. The way that you can get a good microbiome and a healthy gut is through your diet. That's the primary way that you're going to have a good gut. And the way that you do that is by eating primarily a heavy plant-based diet. And the reason that you'd want to do that is because plants contain things like fiber, and phytonutrients, and also a lot of water. So water is a good thing for your gut as well. The phytonutrients in your diet can act as prebiotics. So those are consumed by the organisms in your gut and converted into these things that get into your circulatory system and can deliver a health benefit. But the fiber specifically, that also gets converted into a metabolite, and that gets converted into metabolites that are called short-chain fatty acids. They're one of the most predominantly prevalent metabolites in the gut, and they have a bunch of beneficial effects in your gut as well as systemically.
All right, I'll definitely want to talk more about those short-chain fatty acids in just a second. But Yosep, I want to make sure that you can hop in right here at the baseline on a healthy gut. Anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, what Matt said is perfectly right. But adding on to that, to understand what is the good gut is not easy. For example, like in Asian cultures, there are a lot of literatures, like 150, 200 years ago, there are specific doctors who smell and taste and look at the color of the poop of the king. And they try to understand what is the healthy status of the king looking into the feces. But nowadays, there will be no doctor who's going to taste your poop to tell you if your gut is healthy or not. So that's why nowadays, together with the MA, we are developing, there are a lot of machines and scientific tools other than tasting it to understand if you have a good gut health or not. So those things that maybe today we are going to talk more deep, but just one more thing. Good gut is not very easy, not always easy to realize just looking at the fecal status.
Incredible. I love it so much. I do want to come back around to some stuff that you mentioned earlier. Short-chain fatty acids, probiotics, protein, fiber. Can you talk a little about what these 4 key components are and why they're so important in gut health?
Yeah. So I'll start with fiber. So fiber is non-digestible carbohydrates. So meaning that the carbohydrates that you consume, they don't get digested by the enzymes that are your human enzymes. And they actually get down to your colon where you have the highest concentration of microbiota, or what people call the microbiome. And they are the food source, one of the primary food sources for the microorganisms in your colon. And those are what get converted into short-chain fatty acids. So short-chain fatty acids, there's a few different ones. They're fatty acids that, this is going to sound a little nerdy, but have between 1 carbon and 6 carbons. And there's a bunch of different short-chain fatty acids, but the most common are acetate, propionate, and butyrate. And those have a bunch of systemic and localized health benefits. Probiotics are live microorganisms that confer a health benefit to the human host. And there's a whole bunch of different types of probiotics. So you can't necessarily say that this probiotic has this health benefit. But the way that most people think about them in the sense of the consumer is that they confer a digestive benefit. But there are a lot of probiotics out there that are being demonstrated through clinical studies to confer benefits that you wouldn't necessarily associate with your gut. So stress and well-being or skin benefits. So I mean, it's being demonstrated that they can confer these benefits to other parts of your body. Protein's a tricky one. You don't want a whole bunch of protein to get down to your distal colon where the bacteria are, but there are different types of amino acids, and amino acids are the things that make up protein, that when they get there, they can be converted by these same microorganisms into these metabolites. So you'll hear that a lot. So short-chain fatty acids are an example of a metabolite. There's other examples of metabolites that are produced in the gut that have benefits, and there are certain amino acids that come from protein that can confer health benefits.
This is such great information, and I think it's so cool, Matt, that you said that Korea is sort of, in the forefront of some of these studies on gut health. So I'm curious, Yosep, if you want to, what are some of the things that you're studying now and in relation to these topics?
As Matt explained about the short-chain fatty acid and so on, those are the things that gut microbiome is doing for our body. And a lot of scientists talking that our gut microbiome is like a drug factory in our body, which means that you are not just a restaurant owner with a single owner and cooking and delivering, doing everything, but you are like a CEO of a large corporation and you have a lot of employees in your body, which is a bacteria. And you give them the right materials like fibers or phytonutrients, and your employees start to work and they produce a lot of drugs and deliver them into your blood system. One of the drugs is the short chain fatty acid. So our focus was how can we train our employees like a microbiome? And if there is a lazy employee, can we fire them and can we bring new employees who can do a lot of good things for our body? That was the main focus that we've been doing. But early stage of our work, a lot of scientists start to realize it is extremely difficult to maintain these gut microbial resources in a right way. So what they did was they just used what we call poop pill, so stool in a capsule, and they just deliver those other healthy people's poop into the gut to reorganize my microbiome. But my Professor Holzapfel, and myself, we didn't like that, like no poop pill eatings. So we wanted to make some kind of simulation how we can modulate our microbiome in a target basis. So those kind of simulators which we developed, we call it PMAS, Pharmaceutical Meta-Analytical Screening System, that we can modify our microbiome as we want, but not eating other people's stew. That is the key technology that we've been developing until now.
I really think I prefer your method.
Thank you. Yeah, me as well.
Wow, that is fascinating.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, so a few years ago when Amway was thinking about how do we tie together the interrelationship between phytonutrients and the microbiome, we understood that it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of equation for everybody. So literally in my role at that time, open innovation scientist, as I mentioned, I was looking at a whole bunch of different options, and H.E.M was the only one that was using PMAS, obviously, because it's their technology. But what differentiates it, in my opinion, from all other technologies on the market, as far as I'm aware, is that it's a functional assay, meaning that a lot of these other microbiome companies, they will isolate DNA, and then from that DNA that they isolated from your microbiota or your microbiome, they will try to make recommendations. And in my opinion, that's not the greatest approach, because DNA only tells you what's there. It doesn't tell you what it's doing or how it responds to different nutritional inventions, whereas PMAS does. So it's actually taking a viable fecal sample and you're putting different ingredients on it and seeing how that individual's fecal microbiome responds to those specific ingredients. And based on that, you give a particular recommendation. And ultimately, that differentiation is what led Amway to become a strategic partner with H.E.M. Pharma.
I'm so very glad you did.
So one of the questions that's going through my mind as we're talking about this is this PMAS method is a very good way that you're working with to affect gut change. I'm curious, that aside, either prior or after this, how does our gut change over time in ways both positive and negative? Yosep, we'll start with you.
Yeah, actually, if you think about it, you are introducing a lot of bacteria every day into your gut. Maybe you think you are sterile, but not at all. That your food, even in the air, whatever you bring into your mouth, most of it contains bacteria. But those bacteria, obviously, if they like your gut environment, they will stay there. And then you will increase the genetic information and more employees, as I said. You will have more and more employees. You will be a larger company. You will be even better company for yourself, better health. But the problem is all those bacteria are running away from your gut because your gut environment is not good enough. So the key factor is how to modulate your gut environment in a nicer way. And one of the key infrastructure in your gut to make the bacteria happy is the short chain fatty acid. So if you have a right amount and ratio of a longer chain, so-called the butyrate, which is, as Matt said, is 1, 2, 3 carbons and so on, but 4 carbon chain, short chain fatty acid, butyric acid, if it increases, the most of the bacteria, they love it. And eventually the gut microbial diversity will increase. At the same time, those short chain fatty acid and metabolites will increase. Obviously, from that moment, whatever you consume, phytonutrient, fiber, beforehand, those phytonutrients were not being introduced into your bloodstream, but they are just flushed out into the toilet because there are no appropriate bacteria to receive it and bring it into you. But if you have more diverse bacteria, better gut environment, which means you will have more introduction of the phytonutrient into the functional chemical structures into your bloodstream instead of flushing them away into the toilet. So that's the way how using the PMAS system, we monitor the gut environment and modulate it in an optimal way so more and more bacteria will love your gut environment.
So part of the reason that having a more diverse gut is important is because it increases the genetic potential of your microbiome and it can better utilize the things that you're consuming in your diet that are good for you.
So Matt, you used that term genetic potential a couple times, and I was sort of inferring what you meant by that. But can you just define it for me?
Yeah, so I mean, genetics are kind of the starting point of everything, right? Like they're the base code. And if you have one bacteria in your gut, this is an extreme example, like you're only going to have the genetic potential of that one bacteria to utilize the dietary ingredients that you consume. If you have 1,000 different bacteria in your gut at good levels, now you have the genetic potential of 1,000 different bacterial strains to utilize the good things from your diet in a much more efficient way. And this gets back into the whole digestion and absorption thing that I started off with, is like the more diversity you have in your gut, that's the more genetic potential you have to utilize the dietary ingredients that you're consuming in a more efficient manner.
So long time ago, 1980s and 90s, all the scientists thought that humans have all the potential genes. So which means we do everything by our own. So like a movie of the Spider-Man. So a person who went to the lab and got introduced a gene of the spider, and the person started to shoot the spider webs like no other people can do it. That's the kind of imagination of how the gene works. So that's the potency, how we can do things or not. So scientists thought the human have every gene to digest the fiber. So some person have the gene so they can make a short chain fatty acid out of the fiber, but some person doesn't have the gene, so the person cannot produce short chain fatty acid out of the fiber. But after Human Genome Project, scientists start to realize those genes, we don't have it, but they are contained by our employees, so-called the microbiome. The bacteria have all those genes. So very interestingly, the human only have 17 functional genes to digest carbohydrate, which means any type of cellulose. We cannot do anything with that. But our microbiome contains more than 10,000 functional genes to digest carbohydrate, which means the broccoli, carrots, or any type of phytonutrient that you consume, most of those are being digested by your gut microbiome, not by your own gene, which means you have more bacteria in your gut, more diverse gut. Like I said, it's like a Spider-Man. You have an extra function which no other person has. You eat anything, they become very nice drug like short-chain fatty acid, serotonin, melatonin, all those GABA, gamma aminobutyric acid, all those are going into your bloodstream by the support of your microbiome. That is why the gut microbiome diversity is very important.
So I realize you can't diagnose me, But for 18 years of my life, right, I could tolerate certain foods and I didn't have reactions to things. And then all of a sudden, I could no longer eat those things anymore. I just wouldn't feel good anymore. I'm curious, Dr. Ji, can you speak to maybe, does our gut change over time?
Yes. Your gut change over time. But not only over time, your gut microbiome is declining if you are living in a modern society. So, because in the modern society, all the food additives like the preservatives or the antibiotics and all these kind of things and high sucrose and those nutrient shock, they are every day they are actually damaging your microbiome. That's why you have running away employees. You are losing your valuable asset, the microbiome. At the same time, you are losing functions. So that's why you are not digesting the food like you used to, like 10 years ago, but not anymore. For example, you consume proteins, like a soy-based protein, and you definitely need appropriate microbiome to change them into the butyrate and short-chain fatty acid. Otherwise, your microbiome will convert them into the gas. So a lot of people suffer from the fluctuance, a lot of gas production, while some people doesn't have any fluctuance problem, but they feel very nice in the gut after consuming the soy-based protein. That's because they have a different microbiome. So I can tell you, your microbiome, they are running away from you. So you have to be careful. That's what Matt said, eating a lot of fibers, diverse food, introducing a lot of nutrients for your microbiome. So keep them happy so they don't run away from you. Yeah.
I want to keep happy employees so they don't run away from me. That's so interesting that you say that, because I was really just talking to someone today about if I have even just a few edamame, like I will blow up like a balloon. It's not a pleasant thing. So it's really fascinating.
Yes.
So Matt, I would love to know, how is Amway leveraging this partnership with H.E.M and this science for new opportunities?
Yeah, so as I stated earlier, I mean, understanding that personalization is a thing that you have to take into consideration when you're thinking of the microbiome and those types of interventions. We had a financial investment into H.E.M and have been trying to grow that relationship over the last few years. And we've amassed, I think, what is maybe the largest or one of the largest fecal biobanks in the world. So I think the latest number I heard from Dr. Ji was 80,000 fecal samples that are stored in his labs that are sitting there frozen. And that might sound a little gross, or it might sound like it smells a little gross.
It's not something I anticipated coming into this episode, but incredible. Keep going. I'm all ears.
And the beauty of this is we can leverage that database and that information for future product development. And not only related to like probiotic future development, and we've already started to do some stuff in this area, but understanding how different phytonutrients interact with different individuals' fecal microbiotas and what different individuals can utilize and what they can't utilize.
All right, we are getting towards the end of our episode, but you two, we're not done with you just yet, because at the end of every episode, we love to ask you, the experts, how can we take all of this incredible science that you're sharing with us and transfer it into actionable steps for people like me and Alyssa and all of our listeners at home? So we're going to ask each of you 2 to 3 bullet points. What are actionable steps today that we can take to help our gut health? Yosep, we're going to start with you.
As we discussed before, that eating a lot of diverse food and color food and a lot of phytonutrient, all these are the good nutrient for your microbiome to keep them happy. So please keep your good diet and also probiotics, fibers. Those are going to be the pleasure for your microbiome. And just get away from the fast food, a lot of preservatives. Those are the killer for your microbiome. So those things are science-based final advice that I can provide.
Incredible. Thank you, Yosep. Matt, 2 to 3 action steps. What can we do?
Yeah, no. So I will say there's truth to what your mother told you when you were a kid. Fruits and vegetables are important. And I think that ties into what Dr. G said, because that's where you get your phytonutrients and your fibers. But I think there's some other recent studies that are showing that fermented foods are a good way to increase your gut diversity. So I think trying to include fermented foods into your diet is also a good thing to increase that diversity. And when you do that, it leads to all the good things that Yosep and I have been talking about. I mean, it starts with diet. And I know that's a hard thing for people to change, but that's the key, is getting a heavy plant-based diet and trying to include those fermented foods, which include those metabolites and some of those probiotics. And if you can't do that, then try to get supplements that can do that for you. That would be my recommendation.
All right. Well, this is fantastic information, especially the part about Mother Knows Best, right? This is really great. Thank you both for sharing with us your expertise and your knowledge. I found this truly fascinating. Dr. G, thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
Same to you, Matt. Thank you for being with us also.
Thank you for having me. I always enjoy it.
And thanks to all of you at home for listening in today. Make sure to like and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Subscribe to us on YouTube, and we will see you next time.